You close your eyes when the room goes dark. 8 hours later, an alarm drags you back. You call that a night, and you assume it's how nights have always worked. It isn't. For roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors did not sleep the way you do. They did not lie down at 11 and surrender consciousness in one unbroken block until morning. That habit, the thing you think of as a good night's sleep, is barely 2 centuries old. And the night your ancestors actually lived through was longer, stranger, and far more social than anything you've ever experienced in a bedroom. So what did they do with all that darkness? Start with the obvious problem. Before electric light, before gas lamps, before reliable candles for the poor, the night was simply long. In winter, at higher latitudes, the dark could stretch for 14 hours or more. No human being sleeps 14 hours. Your body cannot. So if you cannot sleep through the whole night and you cannot turn on a light and scroll, what happens in those empty hours? Here is where the evidence gets interesting. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Weyer ran an experiment that quietly rewrote what we thought we knew about sleep. Weyer took a group of modern people and removed artificial light from their evenings. For weeks, they lived in 14 hours of darkness each night, the way a pre-industrial human would have in winter. At first they slept long, paying off a sleep debt. But then something remarkable settled in. Their sleep split in two. They would fall asleep early. They would sleep for about 4 hours. Then they would wake fully, calmly in the middle of the night. And they would stay awake, quietly alert, for 1 to 3 hours. Only then would they drift back into a second sleep that carried them to dawn. This is called segmented sleep. 2 sleeps, divided by a stretch of peaceful wakefulness in the deep of the night. And it appeared in modern people in just a few weeks, simply by giving them a long, dark night. Their bodies remembered something their lives had made them forget. The historian Roger Eckertz found the other half of the proof. Digging through diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature from across centuries of European history, Eckertz uncovered hundreds of casual references to something people called first sleep and second sleep. Not as a curiosity, as an ordinary fact of life. Writers mentioned the gap between the 2 sleeps the way you might mention your lunch break. It needed no explanation because everyone lived it. So picture the night your ancestors actually had. The sun is gone, the fire is low. People lie down not because a clock tells them to, but because the dark has arrived and there is little else to do. Sleep comes fast and heavy. This is your first sleep. Your body does its deepest repair work in these early hours, the slow, dreamless restoration. Then sometime past midnight you wake, not startled, not anxious, just awake. The fire is embers, the world is silent, and for the next hour or two you exist in a state almost no modern person ever touches. What did they do in that hour? Some prayed. Medieval religious texts include prayers written specifically for this waking, this quiet middle of the night. Some rose to tend the fire or check on animals. Some simply lay still and thought. And many, according to Eckertz's records, used it for the most human things of all. Couples talked. They were intimate. Parents drifted into a child's room. Neighbors in crowded homes murmured in the dark. It was a window of calm, unhurried connection, carved out of the night itself. Weyer found something biological underneath this. During that midnight waking, the people in his study had unusually high levels of prolactin, a hormone linked to feelings of calm and contentment. The same hormone that floods a nursing mother. Their bodies weren't fighting the wakefulness. They were bathing in a kind of meditative peace that the modern world has almost entirely erased. Now think about what this means for the social life of an ancient camp. The day belonged to survival. Hunting, gathering, repairing tools, watching children, moving through a landscape that could kill you. There was little room for the slow, deep talk that holds a group together. So when did that talk happen? The anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied this directly among the Jews/Honsi, a hunter-gatherer people of the Kalahari, building on the famous fieldwork begun by Richard Lee in the 1960s. Wiesner compared what people talked about during the day versus at night around the fire. The difference was stark. Daytime talk was practical, often complaints, gossip, the management of conflict. But firelight talk after dark transformed. More than 80% of it was storytelling. Tales of distant relatives, of ancestors, of spirits, of the wider world beyond the camp. The fire extended the day, and in doing so it built the imagination. The night was where culture was rehearsed and passed on, the songs, the myths, the shared map of who your people were and where they came from. Daylight kept your ancestors alive. Firelight kept them human. So the ancient night was not an empty void of sleep. It was a second social world, a quieter, slower, more intimate world that ran on starlight and embers, full of stories and prayers and whispered conversation and a strange, hormonal peace. And then it vanished. Here is the counterintuitive twist. The thing that destroyed the ancient night was not a single invention. It was light itself. As gas lighting and then electric light spread through the 1800s, the evening stopped being dark. People could work later, socialize later, push the start of sleep later and later. The long night compressed. The gap between first and second sleep got squeezed out. Within a few generations, the references to first sleep disappeared from ordinary language. By the early 20th century, doctors had begun treating the natural midnight waking, the very thing your ancestors lived inside of for thousands of years, as a disorder. They gave it a name: insomnia. Sit with that. The peaceful midnight waking that humans experience for almost all of history is now something we medicate against. We lie in the dark at 3 a.m., heart rate climbing, furious that we're awake, certain something is wrong with us. We reach for pills. We blame stress. But a part of what you feel in that moment may simply be an ancient rhythm trying to surface in a body that no longer has room for it. You wake on schedule, just as your ancestors did. The difference is that they greeted it with prolactin and prayer, and you greet it with anxiety and a glowing screen. This is the quiet cost of conquering the dark. You gain the evening, those bright, productive hours after sunset that feel like they belong to you, but you may have lost the night. The long, layered social night, with its built-in pause for reflection and closeness. Your ancestors were never truly alone in the dark. They woke into a world of low fires and sleeping kin and the soft sounds of other people stirring. You wake into silence and a phone. None of this means you should fear the night. It means you might understand it differently. The next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., calm but unable to sleep, you don't have to treat it as failure. For most of human history, that was not a problem to be solved. It was a room you were always meant to live in for a while, a pocket of stillness between two sleeps, where people loved each other and told stories and let their minds wander in the dark. Your ancestors did something all night. They were not unconscious for 8 straight hours. They slept and woke and lived a little and slept again, inside a darkness so deep and so long that it shaped the rhythm of the human mind for 300,000 years. You close your eyes when the room goes dark, and you expect the night to disappear. But the night was never empty. You were simply taught to sleep through the most human hours your ancestors ever knew.